Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're listening to this video. This is Lori Gracie, the TCEA Executive Director, excited to be coming to you from my office at the TCEA World Headquarters. And I'm here today to talk about a topic that is near and dear to my heart, which are learning strategies. We're going to talk about two today, and then I've got two more coming up in a part two. So looking forward to sharing these with you. What we're going to be looking at is how can you tell what strategies are highly effective, and what even does the word highly effective mean? And what should you expect to see if your kids are using highly effective strategies? We're also going to talk about how these two strategies today can be used for remote learning and teaching. So let's talk first about what a highly effective instructional strategy is. First off, it is based on research. It's not just something that I made up or someone else made up. It's based on research and on a lot of really good research. We're also looking to see a big impact on student achievement. If it has the same impact as what we're already doing, there's really no need to change. So we're looking for something that goes beyond what we're already doing. It works across grade level and content areas so that you can learn multiple strategies that work in multiple places, adding to your repertoire and your toolkit. And it also should actively engage students in the learning process. It's going to put some of the onus for actually learning the content back on the students, which is what we would want to see. So when you think about what a highly effective instructional strategy is, we're going to want to look at the effect size. And I know this is not exciting, so hang in there with me, okay? The effect size is a measurement, a statistic that you get when you look at lots of data, okay? And what we want to look for is a certain number of effect size. So let's just talk about what you see on this little screen here. If you see something that has an effect size of a negative number, negative 0.1, negative 0.2, what that means is that instructional strategy will actually cause students to lose learning, okay? It would be bad. You would not want to use that instructional strategy. A good example of this is, quite frankly, and no surprise here, summer school. We know that that really is not a tremendously effective strategy for most students, okay? In this yellow area is where the effect sizes are between 0.0 and 0.15. So if I had a 0.12 effect strategy, what that would tell me is I'm going to get exactly the same amount of learning out of my students, same amount of achievement as I would if they didn't go to school at all. They just kind of grew and matured a year. Again, not what I'm looking for. That doesn't help us any. In the orange section here, you'll see between a 0.15 and a 0.4. And what I would expect to see here is my students are going to have achievement in a year the same as if I hadn't done that strategy and they had achieved in a year. So the strategy, in other words, still did not make a difference in the amount of student achievement and learning. What we're looking for is in this blue section here, anything above a 0.4. Above a 0.4 means the students are going to learn more in that year than they typically would in a regular year with that instructional strategy, okay? So think of it again in other ways. We want to see an effect size higher than 0.4. And that's what's proven to work, and that's going to give us bigger bang for our buck. So 0.4 would be the magic number. Anything higher than that is something we should look at. Now we have to talk about what John Hattie found out. He wrote a series of books called Visible Learning in Action, Visible Learning for Teachers. He has a whole series of them. And what Hattie did was he looked at meta-analysis. A meta-analysis takes all of the other research that's been done and gathers it together into one study. And he looked at 800 of those for his first report. And then he went on to do a total of more than 1,400 meta-analyses, which included 80,000 studies and involved 300 million students. His work matters, it has validity, it's something we should pay attention to. And what he was looking at was, what are all of the instructional strategies that we use currently in schools, and which ones give us the biggest bang for our buck? Which ones really help with student achievement? he came up with a chart where he rank ordered them by effect size. Okay, now remember, and there's a link to that on there for you that you can access. Remember, we said that what we want to see is a 0.4 or higher. So you can see the top strategy on here is a 1.57. 1.57 means you're going to get almost 4 years worth of achievement in 1 year. Okay, let me say that again. A 1.57 effect size means you're going to get almost 4 years worth of achievement in 1 year. That's something we should definitely look at. So 2 of the strategies I'm going to talk about today. The first one is brainstorming, which is part of what he calls cognitive task analysis, looking at a task and breaking it down into its parts. Cognitive task analysis has an effect size of 1.29. 1.29, that's way more than 0.4. That's about more than 3 times more than 0.4, which means we would get 3 years worth of growth in 1 year if we use this particular strategy on a regular basis with students. What's nice about this strategy, and I know brainstorming is not anything new, you know how to do this already, but there are lots of different ways for students to use this. And remember, looking at our definitions of highly effective, we can use it across grade levels, we can use it across content areas, you're going to get big bang for your buck. So that's what we're going to look at is brainstorming. There are a lot of different brainstorming tools. I'm going to talk about the ABC chart, which is, I think right now, my favorite brainstorming activity for students. And this is what you would use typically after you have done learning activities. So the students have been exposed to the learning. And you're going to break your kids into teams, 3, 4, 5 per team, no more, okay? And you're going to give each of them a sheet of paper, real or virtual, it doesn't matter. And on that sheet of paper, there are 26 boxes. In each box, there's a letter of the alphabet, okay? I have a copy of that in Google Docs that you can take and use, okay? In the center square here, you're going to write your topic. So here's how this works. Let's pretend that we're studying Romeo and Juliet, okay, at the high school ELA class. After we've had some initial introduction to the play, we give this out to the team and we give them a few minutes to brainstorm a topic per letter that ties into Romeo and Juliet, okay? Now, they don't go in order necessarily. The kids are just throwing out ideas to each other and they're getting them down on that paper or on that virtual sheet of paper, okay? And they're skipping letters, like X would be really hard in Romeo and Juliet, okay? So they're skipping letters, they can't come up with things, and they're just getting things down on there, okay? Once about 2 minutes, maybe 3 tops is up, you don't want to give them enough time to fill every letter in, okay? They trade with another team, and the other team continues to add words or concepts or big ideas to the letter boxes. They can add more in on the same letter if there already are 2 or 3 in the letter in there, like R for Romeo, they can add others. They're still just trying to get their ideas down. And what this is doing is this is targeting those parts of the brain where they've had some exposure to Romeo and Juliet, and now it's making them pull that content forward. And that's what we want to see for long-term retention. At the end of another 1 or 2 minutes tops, the teams trade back their papers and see if they can put anything else in the boxes that they hadn't thought of before, maybe something they saw on another sheet, okay? Then they need to spend a few minutes going over and making sure everyone in their group knows what each word or concept means. Now, there are a lot of other activities you can do with that. You can have them write it out. You can have them draw pictures. You can have them debate it. You can have them present it. There are lots of other things you could choose to do there. What's really nice about the ABC chart is, first off, it helps the students really think about the information that they have, and it gets them thinking quickly. They're just thinking about letters. They're not specifically thinking about Romeo and Juliet to begin with. Everybody knows the letters. That's where it gets them started. It also shows them a way to solve other types of problems. If they have some problems in their lives, other things that they're trying to learn, this is a great tool for them to use. Doesn't take a lot of equipment. Everybody can write the ABCs down on a sheet of paper. Also, because some of the letters are going to be hard, Z, X, Q, they're going to need to help each other to do that. So we're going to work on our teamwork skills, which we all know are so important. So that's the brainstorming chart, ABC chart that I like so much. You can see 2 examples here. These are sample 1 on the Battle of Concord. And then this one, I know it's hard to read, but you can also see this is on writing, okay, and what we're doing here. This is a great tool. Again, 1.29 effect size, more than 3 years of growth in 1 year if you use this regularly with students. The second tool I want to talk with you about today is the Jigsaw. Jigsaw came out of the 1960s when we were first beginning to mix races in the schools. And this was a way for students again to learn to work together. It's grown beyond that, though, into a way for students to master content, and it's highly effective. It has an effect size of 1.2. Again, you're going to get 3 years worth of growth in 1 year. Let me talk a little bit about how you do this, okay? You divide students first. You divide your content into chunks. So if I was going to be teaching about the Alamo, for example, I might look at the standards and what I have to teach the students about the Alamo and what they have to learn. And I might say, well, I have maybe 3 or 4 chunks. I have a chunk that is all the people involved in the Alamo. I have the place in history, the time, what was going on. That's another chunk. I have perhaps the location, the geography, why that mattered. And I perhaps have a 4th chunk of what does the Alamo, the Battle of the Alamo mean today, okay? And what relevance does it have today? So I've divided my content into 4 chunks, and I've gathered resources to help students learn the content in each of those 4 chunks. The resources could be a textbook, could be a worksheet, could be a manipulative, could be a video, could be an activity, could be a science experiment, could be anything, okay? But I have all those gathered. The number of chunks of learning that I have determines how many kids are going to be in a group. So I've got 4 chunks of content. I'm going to have 4 kids in a group, okay? I'm going to mix those kids up, put them in their groups. That's going to be called their home group, okay? So when I tell them to go home, this is the group they're going to go back to. At this point, I give them all the content. I give them probably some type of graphic organizer to help them take notes and study. We'll talk more about that in just a little bit. And I give them the parameters of what I expect them to be doing. They talk for just a few minutes about what they already know about the Alamo, which means that this Jigsaw activity can be used for pre-learning, after they've had exposure to the content, or even at the end to see what gaps they have left. At that point, then I'm going to break them out into what we're calling their expert groups, okay? Now, while they were in their home group, somehow they each got assigned a chunk of content. You can do this randomly where they just draw numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4. Everybody gets content. 1 is the people of the Alamo, okay? You can do this where you assign it. Maybe you want to make sure you've got students that are struggling or with different areas. You want to make sure they're assigned a piece of the content that they can handle. Doesn't matter, but everyone in the home group is assigned a particular chunk of content. They break out now into their expert groups. So all of the ones get together, all of the kids who are studying the people of the Alamo, they're all in one group. The kids who are studying the time and history and what was going on, they're in another group, okay? And then they're gonna go through all of the resources that you have for that particular chunk of content. They're also going to be understanding that they need to create something to take back to their home group because they're going to be expected to teach this chunk of content to the people in their home group. And so they have to develop some type of teaching aid. It could be a drawing, it could be notes, it could be a graphic organizer, it could be a Google Doc, it could be a video. It doesn't really matter what it is, but they all have to agree to do the same one. And that's to ensure that the right content, the same content appears in all of their presentations that they're going to go back and do. So they work on that for a while. You as the teacher are wandering around the room, you're checking in with them, making sure that they've got everything down, they understand what they're doing, they're not learning wrong things to go back and teach their group. When you believe that they are prepared to go back and teach their chunk of content, then they go back to their home groups. And at this time, each one of the 4 students takes time teaching the others in the group their chunk of content using the visual or study aid that they've got, that they developed in their expert group. After this, you as the teacher can ask then if there are questions. You can do a quick formative assessment to make sure everybody's got it. You can see that there are already gaps in something and you can go back and reteach lots of different ways. but the students are accountable for the learning. You have just facilitated the process by providing all of the different content. So that's the process. Now, there are a lot of other ways you can break this down, okay? Let me show you very quickly here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a second and go back and share another screen that I have open, which is a website that I'm also sharing with you. And that will show you, that you'll have access to afterwards, that will allow you to really understand this better. It's a jigsaw on the Jigsaw method, okay? So there's the link there. There'll also be a link included on the website, okay? And it talks about what you're going to do. Now, I use, for this particular process for teachers, I use emoji cards. So I have some cards that have these 4 emojis on here. I have 4 chunks of content, so I'm going to put 4 people in a group. You never want to have more than 5 in a group, by the way. After that, it's easy for the kids to get lost, okay, in so many kids. So no more than 4, probably no less than 3 or 4, maybe 5 is your best idea for how many to have in a group. So I actually have them broken randomly down. They get into their home group, they draw an emoji card, and then each emoji card aligns to a particular topic, a particular chunk of content. And then you can see I've got all the different pieces I want them to use here. Some of these are videos, some of these are websites, and that's what they're going to go through, okay? I ask them to study the content for a few minutes, okay? And then I ask them to meet, and that's a silent time, by the way. They're not talking to anybody else. They're just studying the content themselves just for 15 minutes. And then I have them break into their expert groups where they're going to discuss that and come up with what their presentation teaching tool is going to be. I give them just 20 minutes for that. There's not a lot of content on this particular topic for them to do, so that 20 minutes is plenty. And then I have them go back to their home group and teach. I've got a couple of other ways here that I'm going to follow up to make sure that everybody's understanding the content. Now, I'm providing this to you because I think there are lots of good resources on here besides the ones here that you see, all of those great links. There's some other things down here, including a jigsaw planning checklist. What do the students have to understand? A great video on differentiated instruction strategies using Jigsaw. A Jigsaw activity template from Google Slides, some graphic organizers, all sorts of good resources that you have available to you on this particular website on the Jigsaw. Let me stop sharing my screen again for just a second and come back to my presentation. So that resource, I think, will give you better information on the Jigsaw, give you additional information on the Jigsaw, how you can break it up. Well, if I have an uneven number of students in my class, I can't break them into even groups. What if I have a student who's struggling and needs additional help on the content? All of those are covered on that website. So if you're happening to be doing remote learning and teaching right now, how can you use Brainstorming and the Jigsaw at this time? Well, there's lots of different ways that you can do this. No big surprises here. Any of the Google Docs, Slides, Microsoft Teams. Padlet is a great way to do these. Idea boards, if you haven't used it before, you can do that on paper. And then if someone in their house has an iPhone or an iPad, they can use the Notes app to scan that paper, turn it into you so that there's no paper going on. What I will say is that you should not do both of these all at the same time. Start with one of these instructional strategies. Really get your students familiar with it, very comfortable with it, using it a lot before you try and implement another one. Just remind you that during this time, between now and May 8th, 2020, TCEA is offering free membership in our organization and free membership in all 6 of our special interest groups in order to support you while you are doing remote teaching and learning. This is available to anybody, and we encourage you to stop by our website, tcea.org/remote-learning, and join us and see what else we can do together. Thanks a lot.